Meeting in order, start with Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you for patiently waiting. I think you're patiently waiting anyway. Next is approval of the agenda.
Make a motion to approve the agenda.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
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 Motion carries. Approval of minutes.
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. Approval of claims for payment.
Make a motion to approve claims for payment.
And I'll second.
It's been moved and seconded. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. Next, we have a lot of change of statuses. Let's start with the sheriff's office.
Like Sheriff's Office, we have Caleb Knudsen, correctional officer, permanent part-time. Resignation. Make a motion on that, to approve that.
I'll second.
It's been moved and seconded. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Motion carries.
Looks like we have Brianne Paxton, resignation, correctional office out of the Sheriff's Office. Move to accept that.
It's been
I'll
moved
second.
and seconded. Any discussion? She's, her husband took another job and they're moving away. Wish them both the best of luck. Any other discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. Next is county attorneys.
I'll make a motion to approve the change of status for the county attorney's office, Marilyn Harms, as a resignation, a retirement, excuse me, that's a retirement. And we'll leave it at that.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Any discussion?
Appreciate all the work
Yep.
she's done for many years. We'll miss her around the area, so, in the courthouse here. So, there you go.
Any other discussion? Wish her the best of luck again. Hearing none other, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. Next is change of status, engineer's office. Did we get one? Nope. Okay. Next.
Wow, that just went around the room in a hurry.
Next is change of status, auditor's office.
We can't do it unless we
Wait,
have it.
time out. Did you ask me to do it? You did?
If you'd fill it out for me, I didn't have a form.
Lance, can we have timeouts?
We're taking one.
It's a,
I had somebody.
I have no memory of you asking me that. I'm really sorry.
that's for Lori, right?
Yeah.
It is.
Gonna be a term, or not a
I
termination.
can fill it out
Need a
for you if you want to
retirement.
consider it. I mean, do you want to consider it and I'll fill it out?
It's on our agenda to do.
It's on the agenda.
It's for
And-
Lori, and it's a
Yeah.
retirement.
I think, couldn't we do it without?
I'll make a
Yeah.
motion to approve the change of status for the engineer's office, Lori Cadner,
Retirement.
retirement,
Yep.
end of the month.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. Next is the auditor's office, which is Tina Schlemme.
We have a pay increase for Tina. An increase of $1,500 in pay on 7/1/2015 at $1,500 for salary for Okay, I'm gonna start over on that. Increase in pay of 1/1/2015 of $1,500 and an increase in pay on 7/1/2015 of $1,500, so in 6 months. Make a motion to accept that.
I'll second.
Been moved and seconded. Any discussion? You want to say anything?
No, just that I hope you approve it because she has more than demonstrated her worth to our office. And when she was hired, I started her lower, not knowing, I hate to say not knowing what she was going to bring to the table, but really not knowing what was going to happen with that position. And when she started making the changes that she does and she becomes so much more involved in things that we really just sort of never really delved into before, especially when it relates to drainage. I just think that she's incredibly worthy of this, and I hope you consider it. And the reason that I did 2 is because I don't want to give it all at once. I want her to strive for the improvement over time. And also, originally when we spoke, I talked about breaking it into 3 components. But if we did that on 6 months schedule, and she went without a raise for the next time that we did raises for people, she would actually go 18 months without a raise. And that's why I went back to the 2, so that she would only have to wait a year for a potential raise, the way the rest of us do.
Any other discussion? Hearing
She was a
none?
good student, and she's letting the department evolve into her department, and it's all looking good so far, so.
And I'd also like to keep her and not have her poached.
I hear you.
Hearing none other.
Moving along.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries.
Daryl, we like you.
Change of status in Conservation Department. I have a few of these. 3.
I got 3. It's like they're all different.
Yeah.
I'll go with the first one, Martin Steiner, end of season employment, temporary seasonal part-time. Make a motion to accept that one.
Second?
It's been moved and seconded to approve. Any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
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 Motion carries.
Jada Staples, resignation. Motion to permanent part-time. Make a motion to approve that one.
Second?
It's been moved and seconded. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. Next is Rebecca Frericks.
That is a hire. So it looks like a permanent part-time position, 24 to 30 hours a week. So make a motion to approve that one.
Second?
It's been moved and seconded. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
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 Motion carries. Consideration of contract for election equipment. I'll give you the floor, Jessica.
Yeehaw. That's, in absence of James being able to make me something very pretty, this is the best I could come up with, so you can pass those around if anybody wants to look at them. And I won't go through all of this because I have spoken to at least 2 of you individually at length about this, and I know that you've also spoken to James. So for the sake of the public being able to hear what I have to say, I'll just hit the highlights. And currently we use equipment that was purchased in 2005 from ES&S. We have 10 tabulators, 9 AutoMark machines, and a 650 central count. These work, and they work great. The fail rate is increasing on them. As an example, just in the past year, I had 4 M100s go down out of 10, which is not a very good, not a very good sign of things to come. And then, you know, usually you're fortunate enough that you find the equipment goes down when you're testing and not necessarily on election day. But, you know, Grundy wasn't so lucky in this last election. They have the same equipment. It tested fine, and on election day they had one go down. And I don't want that to happen here, so I hopefully find everything that I do in testing, but I wanted to let you know that I have been exploring other options since at least last March. And I was notified in the early part of December that the company I'd been looking at was running an end of the year manufacturer's discount. And once I saw the discount and the dollars, I kind of tried to really quickly explore this more seriously than I had in the past to see if this would fit into our plan. So what I'm asking is that if you consider it, and if we sign the contract to purchase this equipment today, we would receive the end of the year discount, and I would be ordering 9 units to replace the 10 that we had for tabulators, 1 central count machine, and then if you note up above it says 9 auto marks, those are actually built into the machines now, so you don't have to purchase those any longer, they're just part of the equipment. There's some figures in here that I'll just pull out a couple. When we purchased the equipment in 2005, it looks like a total cost of $123,590. The quoted cost of the equipment that I'm looking at right now is $78,780. They have a trade-in of our existing equipment for disposal, basically. They're not going to reuse it. It would be $5,000. I didn't really like that, so I have asked other people if they're interested in buying any of our equipment. I have committals from counties for 5 machines if we go ahead and purchase new, that I have 5 of them already sold at a increased value than what they were going to give me for trade-in. So currently, just the way we stand today, instead of $5,000 trade-in, I would have $67.50 for trade-in. And then I reference in here the usefulness of the equipment, 10 to 15 years, both on what we have and what we're getting. And when I say that, I don't mean that like they're gonna wear out and then in 10 years we have nothing. What I mean is, like, we've already had our equipment for 10 years, it functions, it's being maintained. The failure rate, like I said, is increasing every time we use it, but as long as ES&S continues to maintain it, we can continue to use the same equipment. However, the technology that runs it is very, very antiquated and outdated. For example, when we have the 650, I had to get zip drives to put into it to make it work. And I asked James to get them. Zip drive wasn't the right word.
No, you did.
Zip disk.
Yeah, zip disk.
Okay. And he had to order them for me, and it was difficult for him to find anyone that carried those anymore because they're outdated. They're a very large, thick disc. And so it's just struggles like that. And then with this new equipment, it's sort of the difference of saying, okay, if you had a computer that ran on a floppy disk, you could still run it today. You plug it in, boot it up, it still runs. But considering what we have today by way of technology, we're leaps and bounds ahead of what used to be floppy disk era. And that's what I'm looking at, is where there's actually technology built into these machines that we don't even use yet, but there will potentially be a use for it in the future. One of the things that they do is when they're tabulating, they photocopy and store an image of the ballot, and it has encoded at the bottom how that machine read that ballot. So if there was ever a question of how does your machine count this, whatever, it's all stored in the image that it says this is how it was counted. Now, Iowa doesn't currently certify that. It's a technology that was developed before that portion of it was certified, so that would be turned off. But should Iowa certify that in the future and say, you know, you can use these for whatever reason you want to, it's already built into the system and we're not behind the times. The rest of it functions the same as what we do now, except with a more technologically advanced computer monitor screen, the machine built in for the accessible voters that have vision impaired issues. And then I ran through on the back pages for you just some base charges. The driving forces that really made me look at this again were cost savings, not necessarily fancy new equipment. So if you said no to me, I wouldn't cry today. I'd go back to using the same equipment we've been using, and I would be very happy with that. But there are some things to consider that I think are very justifiable in looking at something like this. Number one, I have no control over what ES&S charges for their programming. And the more I have looked around at the competition, it appears to me that ES&S is way overcharging for everything that they do by way of programming our elections, printing our ballots, that type of thing. And these are non-negotiable items. and their maintenance fees and the licensing or the firmware from year to year is also, in my opinion, astronomical compared to other ones. When I look at Election Source, the one thing that stuck out at me most was that programming is not dependent upon the number of races, the candidates, the write-ins, the ballot styles. It's a straight $160 per ballot style. $160 per ballot style, no matter what you put on it. That's what it is. That's amazing to me, because with ES&S, they charge you for everything that you put on there, down to the number of ovals, the number of races, the number of candidates, the number of write-ins, the number of public measures. All of these have a set fee. And by the time you get to the end of it, it's astronomical. As an example down below, if you look at example 2, Iowa Falls City had a special election February 4th of this year, and I had initially quoted them a really cheap cost because I thought, oh, this will be nothing. It's a one race thing, and you know, they'll have maybe 5 or 6 candidates on it, depending on how many people were interested. It won't cost much by way of programming. Well, the programming came in at $1,167, and that's one ballot, one teeny tiny race at the top with 5 candidates, and the rest of the ballot is blank. And it was $1,167 to program that for me. And if it were Election Source, it's $160. Now, Iowa Falls had to pay for that election, so it would be, if you did this equipment, this would be savings that's passed on to them as well as us. Of course, the county pays for the primary and general elections. The city and schools are passed on to those entities to pay for them. If you pass the savings on to them, they would be more apt to use what's given them the right by law to have special elections when they want, rather than just feeling like they're being forced into appointments because they can't afford a special election. I'm not saying I want a whole lot of special elections, but I think that sometimes people make the decision saying, well, we can't afford it because it's astronomical, and that's a cost I can't control. The rest of it is, you know, simple with the ballot printing, 25 cents per ballot at ES&S, Election Source is 22 cents per ballot. And then the maintenance costs are considerably less. The maintenance costs for ES&S were less than what was quoted on here, except that we added the 650 machine, and when we did that, the maintenance costs for those were actually more than what we paid for the machines. So not per year, but for the 2-year package. So when you look at the savings included with the maintenance cost, as well as the programming, which is my big driving force, and then the printing of the ballots and stuff, just in this calendar year of 2014, had I had the new equipment in place and used their cost, considering and putting that against ES&S, we would have saved over $11,000. So I'm asking that you consider this. I know it's last minute, it's thrown at you the very last meeting of the year. Again, I say I didn't bring this to you lightly. I really thought about it and worked really hard the last couple weeks trying to make it work for you, because it was given to me the first week of December as an option. It's a good deal. It was a deal that wasn't offered to me before when I was interested in this equipment. I've also had 2 in-house demonstrations of it. I know Ron's been to one of them. James has been to at least one of them, if not 2. And I think they're a good technology. I talked to another county that already has deployed these in both the primary and the general election, and they are very, very satisfied with it. The other key component too that I like and want to point out is that Matt Parrott Story Kenworthy does the maintenance of these machines for Election Source, and they're local. We have an office in Waterloo and Ames, and the people that I would be working with are people that are very well known to both Nancy and I, that we can work with to get this maintenance and equipment and programming and everything done. So I'm open to any questions. That was it in a nutshell. Or not so much a nutshell.
That's a big nutshell.
So that's where I'm at.
Well, with the demo that I was at, everything you said, obviously, and of course it's true, but you forgot to mention that cost can be split over, and maybe you did, maybe I just didn't pick up on it.
Oh, no, I didn't.
The cost can be split over a couple of fiscal years.
Yes, they have indicated that they're willing to work with us. They know that we're in budget mode right now. They would push off any payments for the next budget year that we're working on. I don't know that they would go out 2, but they would at least take, if you wanted to put some of it this year, if your fund
Right.
balances are looking like you can afford to do some this year, and then budget the rest next.
Fiscal year.
And I forgot to mention too, that when I spoke to Beth about this early on, our auditing firm, I said, I wanted to make sure, can I pay for this out of capital projects as well as this general supplemental, or does it have to all come out of supplemental? I didn't know if that was required because it's elections, and she said, no, you can pay for it out of either of those two funds or joint effort between the two. I think it makes most sense to split it 50-50 and not put all of it in one fund, but that's my opinion.
The other thing that I think that you probably thought through, I'm sure you did, is that you're not going to be booting up these new machines at a major election.
Yes.
You'll be working through maybe if there are any bugs
Yes.
on smaller voter turnout elections, and probably a couple of those before we get to a major election.
Yes.
And using the new
And I do want to
technology.
say too, that I never really thought about it when I was looking at, this is a lot of money to ask when you're a smaller county. We're not a tiny county, but we're a smaller budget county for dollars wise. And to come and ask you for this type of an upgrade, it's a lot of money to ask for. But I learned when I started to ask other auditors, especially when I offered some of our equipment for sale, should we go forward with this? Some of the larger counties aren't in a position that they're gonna be able to upgrade their equipment anytime soon because they have so many precincts that they can't afford to buy all that equipment. They're talking, upwards of $500,000 to upgrade their equipment. And they just said, that's not in the cards for us. And so they're envious of counties that actually can afford to replace a whole fleet. And because of that, the fact that I can do that, that's why I have counties who are interested in buying our equipment. Isn't because they want a whole nother fleet of what I'm getting rid of, it's because they don't have the opportunities that we do by our size of saying we don't need that much equipment, we just need stuff to move forward. And I know I've asked both of you to speak with James about his opinion on technology as well, and I think you've both done that, so I'll answer anything.
Renee?
Before I left, I had started a separate fund, and I think I had put $10,000 in that to save up
Mhm.
each year going, is that?
I asked
in
Beth
there.
because that happened when you did that. That was the first year that you had the ability to assign, restrict
Mhm.
all, when we changed the fund balance on the reporting. And you did it by resolution, but Beth didn't pick up on it. So it's actually not delineated out separately the way that it should have been. And she said, if it was done by resolution, it's honored. So I mean, if we set, which I know it was, $10,000 aside for election equipment, then that's what it is. And so that would still be there and eligible to go towards this purchase. It's just that normally it
It's
gets
not
broken
set
out,
out in-
right, it
okay.
usually gets broken out on a fund balance, but when I spoke to
I think it
Beth
was
about
that
it, she
year.
said it
Okay.
was the first year, and she said, I must have missed it. She said, because I don't have it broken out, but if you have it by resolution, which we do, then it would be
Okay.
solid, so.
Next, I'll go to you guys.
I just did some quick math, so don't hold me to any of it. But if you take the 11,000 that you're savings now and you just divide 8 machines amongst that, because that's your cost. You
Not
could look at
9.
that.
9 machines.
Well, I took it to 8 because you're
Oh.
going to 8. So I would just playing the game again.
Okay,
I mean, that's the cost of your machine. It's $711 a year to own that machine. If we don't do this, if you take the savings in and minus the savings off of your purchase price, so at the end of the year or at the end of the 10 years, you're gonna have about 30,000 left in these. Do the math out there. The ownership of the machines are $375 a year. Why wouldn't you do it? I just, but again, it's fuzzy
Yeah.
math. I could get a lot closer, but I mean, that's a pretty good spread.
Yep.
And that doesn't take into any indication of reliability, things like that.
This
so.
company is a company that, while the name has changed and is serviced by Matt Parrott, Story Kenworthy now, they've been in operation with election equipment for a long time, and there are several counties that have the predecessor to this version. And so if they like their company and stick with it, there will be more people going to this because this is the newer version of what they have. Currently though, we would just be the second county in Iowa if we purchased it to be using this newest form of the same company's technology under a new name. Also, you brought up a good thing when you were talking about why wouldn't you do it? I forgot to mention that we also considered logistics of this and transportation and whatnot, and there's two things that we explored with this, and I even had Jody sit in on a demo because he was willing enough to help me. They're not larger than what we currently have, so they will all fit on our trailer, ideally the way that we transport things now. And there's also a second method that they can be transported in which the bottom, which is a plastic tub more or less, the top part locks on it. There's a locking mechanism on top of that where you can take that off and it has a wheel case on it you can pull behind, and then you can actually stack your plastic tubs up one on top of another if you need to save room. So in theory they're not as bulky, while in reality they take up the same amount of space once they're up and operational. And they operate on SD cards, which I think James says there's probably no problem getting SD cards.
Come a long way from just writing a name down on a ballot and putting it in a box, haven't we?
Yeah, well,
Well, we can even photocopy the hanging chads now, so.
yeah, yes.
It does cost money. I mean, it's a big chunk of change just to have the right to vote, but it seems to be where the country's headed is more of this type stuff. So I don't have a problem with it as far as the math and everything.
Yeah, well, and I think with the math that you brought up and what we've discussed, I think we've covered every variable that we've talked about beforehand. I think so too, so.
The discounts by doing it by the end of the year, the cost of 2 machines, correct?
It's pretty near 2 machines, yeah. So, I mean, that's a big savings to be able to say, you know, I'm gonna buy 7 machines, you're gonna give me 2 free. That's pretty cool.
I'm open for motions. Or any other questions?
Oh, also, if you do approve this, I would like for you as the board to sign the contract, not the auditor, unless in your motion you give me the authority to do so.
So you want the authorization for the auditor to sign the contract?
If that's how you wanna do it, otherwise I'd like you to sign it.
Okay.
So I'll go ahead and make a motion to approve the new voting machines presented here today by our county auditor as listed.
A second.
It's been moved and seconded. Do you want us to sign it or authorize her to sign the contract? Authorize the
It
chair
would
or
be-
authorize her?
Yeah, it should be, I would think that, and I don't know legality-wise.
It sounds
On
like
that.
the funds are coming out of general funds and not specifically out of the auditor's budget.
Mhm.
Am I understanding that correctly?
Right.
And I think either the board should sign it or
That's a hard time. Yeah.
specifically authorize Jessica to sign on behalf of the board.
Can I just let the minutes reflect that, have the board sign it, or does that work for you? Okay.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. Any discussion? Oh, I think you covered all the discussion.
Thank you.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Motion carries.
Thank you very much.
Yep, thanks, Jessica.
Next is a resolution, Hardin County Trails Commission Fund.
Me again.
Jessica?
You established the Hardin County Trails Commission to, for lack of a better term, govern and take care of the development of the trail and grants and things involving that. And not to put words in your mouth, but because you didn't want to commit county funds and energies towards that, you wanted someone else to pick it up and go with it. But it's still ultimately held by you guys, the county. By way of doing that, all of the monies that come in that are donations or grants that are received, whatnot, need to go through a government entity in order to be dispersed, so we have acted as the fiscal agent for that. Meanwhile, the Trails Commission itself is actively seeking and receiving not only donations, but they're trying to do other grants as well. And in theory, would like to have their own pot of money built up to do the matching portion of local grants, rather than saying, okay, the county needs to match $30,000 in order for us to get this grant. They'd like to be able to present you with that, because you're already holding their funds, and say, look, here's our money sitting there, go ahead and put it towards the grant. One of the things that came up was, when you purchased the trail, the railroad salvage company was not completed with their salvage work. They needed to continue to rent the property from us, and they rented it, if I'm recalling correctly, for about $1,200 for 3 months. That still is not fully completed yet, and so there's still monies due from that, but I haven't received all of those yet. When I received that rental check, rather than put it in the general fund, because that would be a windfall to the county on something that they never really were gonna commit the money, taxpayer money towards, I put that into the fund that was established as a trust and agency fund for the Trails Commission, so that it's sort of their pot to put towards this trail. The second thing that happened that brought in money towards this is there was a utility easement that you considered earlier this year from ITC. When they purchased that permanent easement from you, a check came for that purchase of that easement. And I spoke to Beth to make sure that this is money that we shouldn't just take as a windfall and say, hey, thank you very much, Trail, and then stick it in our coffers and call it good. She said, no, that really should go towards the trail and improvements upon it and whatnot. So in order to make that work, she suggested that I give you this resolution that basically says these monies that have come in by way of either donation or grants that are gonna be coming in the future, and also things like this where it's the rental income from a trail that we happen to own but aren't really actively seeking rent on, and also the easement, that money should be then placed in that fund as well for future improvements and use upon the trail. So she suggested the resolution, that's what I placed in front of you, and you can consider it.
Thank you.
Randy, did you look at this at all? You haven't seen it?
No, I haven't seen it.
I'm gonna pass that down to
Yep.
him.
I should say too, for the money to come out of that fund, it has to go through the treasurer's office because it's a trust and agency fund. She writes the disbursements for it, not my office. They have certain criteria that needs to be met for them to turn in a claim form, so they can't just randomly show up and say, I wanna buy $500 worth of food because we're gonna have a picnic. They have to present legitimate statements and receipts and whatnot with a claim form in order to get monies from the fund dispersed through the treasurer. I did create a claim form for them, and they should be doing the first 2 claims within the month of less than $200 involved in getting like a post office box, I believe, and a website up and running.
You gave it back, you must not have saw anything wrong, huh?
What's that?
You gave it back, you must not have saw anything
No,
wrong.
I didn't see anything. About the only thing I would say is, yeah, I mean, I agree with Jessica that this does need to come before the Board of Supervisors in regard to action. If you just want to break it down, the Board of Supervisors does need to decide what should be done with these funds. This is basically county property due to the nature it came in. I mean, it is not, the Trail Commission is not entitled to these funds directly. So there has to be a decision by the board that these funds are closely enough associated with the trail or should go to this fund for purposes of promoting, developing that trail. So it is something that would be necessary, for these funds to be designated for that purpose.
Randy, is there a reason to have number 2 in there? It says it was the desire of the Board of Supervisors to fund improvements. I mean, it's a desire, it's not a, I understand why it's there, but does it really mean anything when you just say it was the desire? Will you tie future boards' hands or anything like that?
Well, I'm sitting here, having given it back. My recollection was that sentence went on further.
Yeah,
That it was solely by
grants and donations
Yeah.
rather than taxpayer dollars.
And I think that was the important part for my interpretation of that sentence, that this board desired that this be developed and funded via donations, grants, etc., and not by taking tax dollars out and using it for that purpose.
Okay.
Now, I would imagine, but I don't know how Jessica came up, with the authorship in regard to this. But my guess would be is she recalled that sentiment expressed by either individuals on this board or the board in its entirety. I recall that.
Mm-hmm.
I don't see any problem with it being there. Are you tying the hands of future Board of Supervisors? No, a future Board of Supervisors can come in and basically wipe out whatever you guys do.
Okay. That was my only concern with it, that we would tie
Maybe I
future
should
boards
keep
with the
this.
state.
Go ahead and keep it.
I'll make a motion to approve the resolution for Hardin County Trails Commission Fund.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Any discussion? Hearing none, roll call.
Ron?
Aye.
Brian?
Aye.
Lance?
Aye. Motion carries. Next we have is county engineer's contract. And I know a few questions have been raised upon this. One was the beginning date, but it looks like the day of January 2015 and ending 31st of 16. Daryl, have you been through this?
Been visiting with Randy.
I better say something here at the outset. It appears that there might be two different of these agreements floating around. I know Daryl provided me one, and I made some revisions, which I believe I distributed out via email yesterday morning. I believe that may be what Daryl's working off of now, is my revisions as opposed to his original. So I guess, I think it'd make it a whole lot easier if we're on the same page.
That would be good. I mean, we were discussing just what was on it, and it seemed like your copy was different than mine.
Mm-hmm.
So it would be nice to have the one we're working with.
And I don't know what you fellows have right
Which one do you have?
This
now.
one?
The big difference
I
got
know
the same
that
result.
I went over with, I made a phone call to our HR consultant, and we had some questions. But if my copy isn't the one that we're supposed to be using, then maybe I should reread.
This is the most current one.
Yep.
Okay.
Period beginning,
Is that the one I sent out?
first day of July, January 15th.
And I mean, I can
ending
print out,
day
I can print
30th.
out some more of those, or I have an extra copy of the one you.
Can't somebody just take it over and mix it?
That's the first day of July. Mine's the first day of January.
Right.
Yeah.
Mine is too.
Yeah.
Maybe the one that's right now, come back with the copies.
This is the one. This is the most current one that Daryl just gave us.
But those aren't the days. They're not the correct days. These are the correct days.
These are the days you
See,
want.
Yeah.
If I may, I believe that's probably the first point in the issue, is this, because I know what Daryl submitted to me had the dates of January 1. 2015 as a starting date and then running for 2 years.
Right.
I thought Daryl made a mistake. I mean, I did. His previous contracts have been on 2 years, running on fiscal year. Paid on a fiscal year. That's why I threw it in as a fiscal year. Knowing that there was going to be a difference here, I only threw that for 1 year. I don't know if you're looking at 1 year, 2 years, 3 years, or what, with respect to the length of the contract.
2 years.
So I know that is a potential issue is in regards to whether this contract starts January 1 or July 1.
Well, the original intent was January 1st, because if we wanted to do something, it would be 6 months' notice. That's the part we added to the contract, was giving him 6 months' notice for termination,
That is one change.
which would put us July 1st with the 6 months' notice. So if we redo his contract in December, so his contract would end in December for the new one to start again, is what we were thinking when we did it.
Now, I am just going to bring to the table at that, if that in fact is the case, and let's put it this way, if you're adopting a new contract in that fashion, then I think you need to terminate the existing contract as well, because you can't have two contracts in effect.
No, yeah.
Yeah. And I mean, I don't know that accounting-wise, it would create any, I'm not an accountant, that it would create any problems with his contract running on a calendar year basis with basically his pay or budgeting running on a fiscal. I don't know if that's going to create any problems or not.
Okay.
Well, then, some other questions that I had and would like your opinion on, if I could. And maybe it's just verbiage that's supposed to be that way, but if a salary person is talking about paid holidays, that just means that, it doesn't mean that he's going to get paid extra on the holidays. It means that he will not lose pay. He'll get docked pay.
Number 8.
Let's try
Number
8
8.
first, where it says paid holidays. And then since salaried person, you can go to 7, 25 vacation days. And then it says compensation shall be paid in full during the allotted vacation days off. So does that mean double salary, or does that mean that he's just gets those vacation days, but he's a salary person?
Okay. My understanding, the intent, this being the intent, was that Daryl would be a salaried employee, which would mean vacation, he would be compensated while he was on vacation, but it would not be double compensation with respect to that. He wouldn't be paid twice for taking time off, but he would be paid. The same being in regard to holidays as a salaried employee. It would not be like a hourly employee
Right.
type situation. He would be paid while not working holidays, but again, he wouldn't be compensated twice.
Right. So we were just wondering, and I'm sure that that's what Daryl meant. So is the wording correct?
It could lend itself to cause the questions that you have asked, Ron, with that word paid in number 8. I mean, I think that is what probably led you with respect to that. The engineer shall be granted insurance, health, dental, life, vision, benefits, sick leave. I would propose to eliminate that, eliminate the word pay. Sick leave, holidays, and other fringe benefits.
And then that compensation shall be paid in full, probably can be eliminated too, because the sentence before says that you get 25 days of vacation, so as long as, we're agreeing that there's vacation.
My thought in regard to that is perhaps it could just be worded the other way around. I would leave that up. The engineer shall be entitled to 25 vacation days per year, 25 working days to be away from such employment. The reason why I'm saying that, I don't think there would be an issue, because I think you would fall back to what is governed in regard to basically payment and going up to number 6. The board shall pay engineer in equal installments on regular secondary road department pay days and annual salary of, which is the general provision which is going to govern that he's going to be paid whatever it works out to, so much. I believe it's, well, maybe I better not say, I'm not sure when regular secondary road department pay days are, whether that's weekly or every 2 weeks. But that's the way he would be paid. So I would propose either you could put it the engineer, I'm going back to 7 now, strike that sentence in its entirety. Compensation shall be paid in full during allotted vacation days off, or put in something to the effect, while on vacation, engineer shall be paid his normal salary. I think.
We all know that that's what Daryl intended. Everybody knows Daryl. It's just that it's worded correctly so that they're.
I have no problem either one.
Then let's also, we were really struggling with the wording on 11. It goes 11A, then B, and we're okay. Then it goes 11I.
The new one doesn't do that.
Oh, the new one doesn't do that. Okay.
I reworked that.
Okay, then we go to 11C. And we go, if the engineer continues habitually intoxicated or under influence of drugs after being specifically notified in writing by the board and given 15 days to commence rehabilitation therefore. So that's saying that if there's habitual intoxication, that if within 15 days he commences rehabilitation, everything's fine?
We're getting a little outside just in terms of this agreement here, but I think under the current law.
And again, we're talking to Daryl. We're
I'm
probably going to be fine here, but.
And I'm
Maybe not at the end of this meeting.
I'm by no means, Ron, an employment law expert, but I do believe under current law, employers do have some responsibility or duty to attempt to allow employees the opportunity to rehabilitate themselves.
And I was wondering, and I'm good with that, but I was wondering if this needs to even be in the contract, if that's not covered in our handbook.
Well, oh, by golly, I'm going to end my job as a county attorney the way I started it. You don't need a written agreement with this guy. Just say you want him to be an engineer for X amount of dollars, et cetera, et cetera. Hey, shake his hand, you're good. Now, people don't do that anymore. But in regard to your question, does it need to be in this contract? No, it doesn't. Really, I think I just said nothing needs to be into this, contract. This is what you guys are agreeing to, or not agreeing to. I believe, this provision is a carryover from previous agreements. I don't know that I can specifically state where the first one came from exactly. I know I saw it, I know I revised it. To begin with, the first agreement that Daryl had. This is a carryover. Again, I think this whole provision, this C, is probably coming out of some standard language out of governmental employee agreements. I think that's probably where it's coming from. When I see that C2, to me, that says, okay, this is an attempt to show that the employer is providing for rehabilitation in the case of alcoholism or drug dependency. That's what jumps out at me. These others,
then you
coming
go-
down to
yeah.
3 and 4,
Exactly.
again, what this jumps out at to me is that providing for some extra notice on what I'm going to term the less serious reasons to terminate for cause. Violation of policy, poor performance, okay? It's increasing the notice provision, notice and time. If you take a look at 1 and 5, violation of law, being 1, lack of license, being 5. Those are the serious. Number 1,
Right.
he can't do his job without a license. It could depend on the violation of law. I suppose if Daryl got a speeding ticket, it might be different than him shooting his employee. You're going to be looking at a little bit different type of situation there. But those are the more serious reasons for terminating for cause with no notice provision. It's that type of situation, the real dealing with public safety, personal safety, where you would basically be reserving the right to move in and act. Say you guys get together, make the decision, hey, we got to get this guy out of here, terminate, take what other actions necessary, etc. But that would be
Wouldn't
the most
all
serious.
this, and the bad thing, and we had mentioned this before, we're rewriting our handbook, but wouldn't all of this be in our handbook basically, that, if you're breaking our county policies, that you can be terminated?
Mhm.
At the revision of our handbook, we've taken out a lot of the
Uh,
things that are
But
federal
we're still running by the
laws.
code
Right.
of Iowa.
We took out a lot of things because
And there's a,
of that.
and Daryl, there, within the code of Iowa, there's a whole section on engineers, and, we have to abide by the code of Iowa. I'm just wondering if this should all be in, if you're breaking operating policies, and it continues for 15 days after the board detects that we're breaking policy, as long as he stops it within 15 days, we're good. Period. So then so if it restarts then a year later, then we get 15 days again? This is where Paul and I had the discussion is, it's up to our interpretation of what's right and what's wrong. And if we leave it out and just go by the handbook, then we don't have to try to interpret what's being said here with this 15 days. That's where my questions lie, and I guess I'll go on your advice.
As a representative under the employer, being the board in this instance, it would be my preference that subparagraph C would be gone in its entirety. It would make it cleaner.
Yeah.
Now, I've got to back up, and I would caution the board, and advise that that doesn't mean there aren't other laws and policies that would govern here. And we've already talked about one. When you're dealing with an employee who's an alcoholic or substance abuse dependent. I mean, there are other laws that you are going to have to deal with under that type of situation, whether or not they're in here. So, as an employer's attorney, basically that would be my preference. In certain extent, less is better, because it gives more flexibility. Less chances for contradiction, which I believe you were referring to in regard to the personnel policy. Now, I've got to, and I'm going to say it right here, on these types of situations, I mean, I hope you realize it kind of puts me in a little, well, actually, it kind of puts me in a little bit of a conflicting type situation. I represent the board. I represent officers of the county. I mean, Daryl tossed this at me and said, hey, take a look at this. I mean, he's done it before in previous years, and I've done this in previous years. But it's kind of a situation of I'm kind of sitting in the middle. I mean, here. My duties and my representation as county attorney goes first to the board. Now, don't get me wrong there, okay? But in regard to this type of position, I'm going to tell you, I have put some things together based upon the extent of my understanding as to what you gentlemen were looking at. The main thing that I can do here is to document and put down what the four of you agree to. I mean, I can give my opinion. I will give my opinion when asked. I mean, in regard to this, as I just did on this subparagraph C. Okay? I don't know that that was necessarily something that Daryl specifically requested in there, but I know that is something that has been in his previous agreements. Okay?
So did he say to strike it, or did he say to leave it?
I think he said strike.
Okay. Question for Daryl on C. Do you have a problem with striking that?
Yes.
Oh, okay.
You do?
Because?
Okay.
The personnel policy is not a binding contract. This is our binding contract. This is the terms that we will work under. Plus, we've got such a short window of opportunity. I'm not opposed to looking at this at a future date, but right now, it's a rush deal. And I'd feel more comfortable leaving it alone for now.
Is there a way that we can leave that section up for future discussion then? That we can actually sign the contract in lieu of C is still a working contract? You know, we may revisit that.
I mean, you can revisit anything by agreement. I mean, let's put it that way. The first thing that came, you can make this agreement shorter term and revisit it at a shorter term. I don't know if anybody wants that. But I mean, when you first mentioned something, it came into my head, let's make this January 1 to June 30th of 2015. Readdress it July 1, 2015. I don't know if you want to be on that short of a, schedule. The other thing is, you're looking at those, if it goes in, let's put it that way, if it's included in order to amend the existing agreement is going to take the agreement of both sides. Okay?
Yes, yeah.
So in other words, either side would basically have the veto of that coming up again until the contract has reached its end.
Do you have any other things besides that? No, was that the three things?
Those were the things that, our HR person and I
So,
had conversation
Randy,
over.
can we go back to number 7? real quick, can we just put normal compensation? If you put the word normal in front of compensation, would that take care of that?
It would, with respect to it, the word normal would, or, as I
Salary.
said, I think totally just striking out that sentence. If Daryl's okay
Okay.
with striking the sentence, that would be my suggestion, since it'd be
Yeah.
cleaner.
You want to strike the first sentence of number 7?
Yeah, but I mean, because
No, the
The
compensation,
second.
second one.
part.
number 6 says,
You're
when
gonna
you know
get
what the
paid.
intent is, we can always go back and look at the video.
Well, I guess the only thing it does to me, I guess in my mind, it kind of protects Daryl that someone doesn't say, well, no, he doesn't get paid. He can have the days off, but we're not
Right.
paying him. He doesn't get any
Yeah, we
compensation.
have to have it, yeah.
You know, so I
Because
think
if-
that's kind of why that's put in there. It just
Yeah,
says,
if he would get compensated with pay beyond his salary, that's another, actually, is, I think I figured out about $8,000
Yeah.
as an increase in salary for vacation and paid holidays.
Yeah, and I guess, well, I by no means have seen large numbers of employment contracts, but the ones I've seen in regard to salaried employees normally do not have the provision with regard to payment of holiday. I mean, there are definitely in regard to amount of time that can be taken away from work, if you would want to call that vacation, holiday time, whatever. But usually I have not seen a specific reference in regard to compensation, just because I would say, and this is my guess, because of the long-term understanding that a salaried employee is getting paid X amount for whatever period of time it is, regardless, provided that they are working. Termination, of course, would take care of that, but, not otherwise. They're, in regard to time off for sick, there's nothing referred to there in regard to the compensation aspect. Now, the only thing involved here that's a little bit different than that normal salary are the provisions in regard to the payment for unused vacation. And was there another provision in regard for another unused time? Vacation day.
Vacation.
Well, unused vacation days.
Mhm.
In regard to it. That's a little different wrinkle upon a salaried employee. But if it's provided for specifically, which it is in this, that's going to take preference. I don't have, again, I don't think it's anything to go too much. I think the board just needs to make a decision. Darryl has to say whether it's agreeable as to whether it just gets stricken or whether we put normal compensation.
Daryl, I guess I'd ask you on that, where your comfort level is on that sentence number 2.
On number 7,
7,
Yes.
sentence 2 on compensation. You want to strike it completely or put the word normal in front of it? Or something else?
well, I don't know the legal, I know what I would do if I took a vacation day, I'd expect to get paid, but if
Mhm.
I didn't, and you didn't work, you don't.
You get paid your normal salary is
Yeah,
what you're talking about.
that's-
Right.
Yeah. Yeah.
So you wouldn't get docked, and we all agree with that. And that's what we agree with, it's just if the wording was proper.
Yeah. If you think that's all right, that's.
Like I said, I think that would basically carry through regardless, but if want something in there, just to make sure, let's put it this way, I would propose normal compensation shall be paid, take out the in full, shall be paid during allotted vacation days off.
And then the same thing with holidays, just take off paid, right?
Yeah,
I don't know that we
scratch-
have a
scratch paid.
specific. Oh. in
On number
H.
8.
For
Yeah.
number 8.
Yeah, I scratch paid.
Paid, yep.
You like regular better?
think normal's subjective. You know, what is normal? Depends on someone's point of view.
Especially if you use it with Daryl.
Regular or normal? Which works better?
Neither one of those
Well,
works.
Both work for me, whatever.
it doesn't involve me, but I just don't like the word normal because it's just subjective.
Regular? Can we go with regular?
Because you're putting it in front of the word salary, right?
Compensation.
Compensation, not
Regular.
salary. Compensation's your insurance and
Better than
everything else.
normal. I don't know.
Because you can't just put wages because,
I'm out.
Regular's fine, right? Okay.
okay.
Regular's fine,
Real.
Daryl?
Normal's not regular. I'm running out of room.
Yeah, so we got that one handled.
The only other thing we had left were the days, or did we miss anything else? Start date.
Were you gonna add something on that one? We talked about 11.
One thing, better make sure it's just one thing. That Daryl had brought up at the beginning of this meeting as to whether there might be some contradiction on 11A. And it would be at the very end. That's a provision dealing with severance if the board should terminate the contract without cause. I'm looking at 11A.
Yeah.
Okay.
And what it would be is, besides being the payment, and now I'm picking up the last sentence, a severance allowance in an amount equal to 6 months' salary, it would be comma, plus accrued vacation and benefits. Period. So the language would be just at the end of that, subparagraph A, plus accrued vacation and benefits. Now, and the reason why I said contradiction, if the board would take a look down to sub D, which is actually the engineer's termination without cause. In that event, the engineer would continue to work, paid his regular compensation, up to the date of termination, but no severance allowance shall be paid other than accrued vacation and benefits. And I think so that was just an addition that Daryl proposed to kind of keep things consistent. I think it probably would have, the contract probably would have been interpreted that way anyway without expressly saying so, based upon the general accrued benefits provision and also the employee handbook.
So then, are we good with that?
Mhm.
So then, still, with the interpretation of, and we could go to 1, 2, 3, and 4 with the 15-day thing, you know, I'll read the number 2. Engineer continues to be habitually intoxicated or under influence of drugs during the working hours after being specifically notified in writing by the board and given 15 days within which the commence rehabilitation therefore. The interpretation of that, I have no, so that, to me, that means that if we're habitually being drunk and then if within 15 days we commence rehabilitation, we're good to go for a while again. Is that what that means? I mean, I'm not quite sure what that means.
Yeah,
And the same thing with engineer breaches any of the regular operating policies of the board from time to time in effect, and such breach continues for 15 days after notice thereof from the board. I'm not quite sure what that means, that if we keep breaking some operating policies for 15 days after we warn Daryl that there's a breach, that is, if it has to go for 15 days longer, then we can address it, or it just seems like the wording, and that's where, Paul said that our HR person was saying that, the other things could be rewritten easy. He says this is, there's so many ways to interpret it, that it's hard to enforce. I don't know.
I would agree.
I mean, you're kind of wanting to strike, and then I guess I'm going back to our handbook policies. And can we do both? Work with our handbook policy as well as, I don't know, the 15, I don't know if you can do both. If you do one, then you can't do the other, our handbook policy, or what?
Where these provisions would be in conflict with the handbook policies, these provisions would govern, being the specific contract between you and the engineer. If there is no conflict, or if this agreement would not cover the topic, but the handbook would, then of course the handbook policies are going to apply. Ron, like I said before, I don't know where these came from.
I'm just wondering how we would go about enforcing that and what it really does. I just don't, when we had discussion over this, and we're just trying to understand it as of.
Basically, the way I read these, they give you some guidance for an initial, what I'm going to refer to as an initial violation. Your problem is well, what happens if 6 months, a year down the road, you have a second?
Well, what's habitually intoxicated mean? Continues to be, if the engineer continues to be habitually intoxicated, then then we do notification, and so that's not a one-time deal.
Well, I mean, no,
Or-
it's not. I mean, it's more than one. I think it's even more than two. You are looking at that. If a person showed up for work 3 times under the influence of alcohol, I'd say go for it. But then you run into the other thing, intoxicated. What's intoxicated? Are you going to pull out a PBT? And
That's where we
go
were
into it?
at. I mean, this was
all
our
of it.
conversation.
All of it is going to be. I mean, all of it is going to be subject to interpretation, subject to debate, which is not good. I mean, when you're dealing with something like that. So, I mean, in the realm, as a representative or the attorney for employer, that's why it would be my suggestion to, strike it. I don't know where it comes from. I don't know whether at one point in time, this might have been part of the employee handbook. I don't know if these provisions ever were. I don't recall them. My guess is, and I am thinking, and maybe Daryl would correct me here, I'm thinking that maybe the first time around may have been kind of like the same of this year, when Daryl was first selected as the engineer and needed an agreement. I think he might have brought something into my office. Might have been a boilerplate employment agreement. It might have been something that he got from another engineer in some other county, or maybe even a private engineer. And this might have been part of it.
Yeah, it was part of a.
And I mean, in that regard, it's just kind of carried over. It just basically has carried over from year to year. Now, I'm just going to toss something out here, and I guess maybe Okay, guys, now I'm putting on my mediator hat. Okay? Not my attorney hat, it's my mediator hat. One thing I would think I would be looking at on something here is the likelihood. The likelihood of these matters actually coming about. Number one, this is from an employer's standpoint, and I'm just going to take it from each party's standpoint going down. Number one, the criminal or fraudulent act. Number one, there is no notice. That is basically going to be about an automatic termination, regardless, as long as it is provable. It can't just be based upon speculation, hearsay, etc. And there isn't in here really any protection for Darrell as engineer anyway. There's no notice. We're going down to number two, which does contain the notice. I don't think it's likely to happen, as far as I know.
And I don't think so either.
And I don't think anybody here has been saying
No.
that really it would be.
No.
The other thing is, and I think I already informed the board of this type of protection is already in the law. Regardless of whether it's stated, regardless of whether it is stated in this agreement, an employer does have some duty these days to rehabilitate, okay, with respect to it. Now, you might be dealing with more or different gray areas when it comes to case law or statutory law, but I'm just informing you that it's already out there. To a certain standpoint, this might be more specific in one area, and that being that 15-day provision. Okay, just kind of going both. In turn, I would turn around and say to Darrell, you already have protection in regard to this area, but it might not be the 15-day provision. Number three, that to me, Ron, this is one I really would have been jumping on and saying,
Well,
I have no
I've been
idea
reading
what
that
this
one
means.
too. It's 2, 3, and 4
Yeah.
that we were thinking that he's covered anyway with the handbook, and that just leaves it open for interpretation of what was said.
Well-
And how you're going to interpret it.
3 as it is written is probably ineffectual, period. And I'm just going to tell you why. What are the regular operating policies of the board? I'm not talking about a personnel handbook. I'm talking what are the regular operating policies of the board? That's what this says.
I know.
I have no idea what that is. So I don't think this really has any effect the way it is, the way it's written, either way. That goes either way. I would never recommend that you attempt to terminate for cause based on number 3. Now, number 4, pursuant to agreement, job description. Is there an additional job description with regard to the engineer in addition to this agreement? Okay. There isn't? Okay. I was just wondering. In regard
I
to.
think there is one that was there, but
Yeah,
Yeah.
there's something out there.
This is really about the only one where, and again, you're still gray area. You guys as a board of supervisors are determining whether or not a professional engineer is doing his job or not. I'm assuming you're not just going to pull something out, you're going to get a little advice and the like and go from there. But really, out of the 3, this is the one provision that would, potentially have, some basis.
I guess kind of where I'm at on the whole thing, because I think we could probably debate him off for quite a while. I think as you move forward, this contract could definitely get better, even in 2 years. It's only a 2-year contract. If we were doing this contract with a new person coming in, I would probably be a little bit more nervous, but we have some history, a pretty good history so far with Darrell, so I guess this part of it doesn't affect me today as far as leaving it in. I don't see it big going one way or the other as far as a deal breaker. But I do think in 2 years from now it could definitely be looked at, and I think with the HR person we have, I think it'll eventually start to take care of itself as you move forward here through the spring and next year. I think once you get the handbook done, this will kind of fall in place too. So I think the next contract will even be better than this one. So
The
kind
regular operating policies are the policy like the ditch cleaning policy, driveway policy. I think that's what number 3 is.
Mhm.
Is if you have a policy that our trucks don't go out in the dark and I send the trucks out in the middle of the night to plow, I'm breaching the county's policy by ordering the crew to go out.
I am just going to say if, that would have any effect, and if the board was going to rely upon it, those better be identified in this agreement. In regard to it, because I don't think, an employer is not going to be held up on something that vague. There just isn't any way. And again, let's put it this way, HR might not like it. From an attorney standpoint, I don't really like it, but the most thing I can say, you take a look at number 6, which is kind of a savings clause, if you leave the rest of that in, is that they're neither exhaustive nor exclusive. So basically what I'm...
So what does that say?
This is not your limited list of reasons to terminate for cause. There could be numerous other reasons, as long as they're, of course, legitimate. Basically, it's saying they don't have to be listed here. So, kind of as a savings matter, I tell you, my preference would be, it would be gone.
That's
My
what
second,
I was
my
advised
second
to do.
step would be, is with perhaps the exception of number 4,
Right.
number 5,
5.
and number 1's going to be a given with or without this. I would not rely upon terminating an engineer based upon these others. I wouldn't.
So in saying so, inasmuch, should they even be there then?
Well, I think I have already said.
Yeah, well, that's kind of where I'm at too. If
My-
we're not
my
going to
opinion is
terminate for
no.
any of these things, why are they in there?
Back again, here goes that mediator's hat. Back on again. The situation, the way I view things, sitting at this table, we have the Board of Supervisors as employer, have Daryl as employee. You're negotiating an employment agreement. I have not heard the whole board state this has to be gone. I have heard Ron state he definitely would like to see this gone. And I have heard Daryl state he wants this paragraph C to remain in. So it's kind of, wrong term to use, but I'm going to use it anyway, kind of at an impasse, so to speak, there in regard to reaching agreement on this agreement. And unless one party or the other gives, or there's a agreeable compromise, we're potentially at a standstill.
Daryl, you want 1, 2, and 3 in there? After hearing the explanations.
I feel pretty confident you can take 2 out, but the rest of them I'd like to research more.
So we can go ahead and strike 2.
And do we have a job description?
There is one. when I interviewed for the position, there was a job description.
Yeah, I was thinking there was something, I just don't have it here.
And I know that it's changed over time, so maybe
Yeah.
an updated one?
Yeah.
Well, the other question we got is, do you want to start this on July 1st or January 1st?
January 1st, I thought was the intent.
And then we'd have to end the current contract.
Yeah, I mean, number 12 says you can amend it, revise, renew, or extend it anytime. Got either one.
With both parties.
With approval of both parties.
Yep.
So I don't know if you want to amend it or.
Well, like Clint said, I think it makes sense to do it now, because that gets you 6 months in front of July 1st. So it does help for budgeting.
Now I'm going to have to kind of ask here a little bit, since I'm guessing I'm going to be making the revisions here. What I am looking at right now is the term of this agreement would be January 1, 2015 through December 31, 2016. Is that the consensus? I'm not asking for a I'm not asking for a vote of the board approving the entire agreement here, but is that the consensus of the board?
Is this the end
that'll
of day?
commence?
This is on a 1-year
16.
contract, or that's a 2-year contract?
That'd be a two.
That's
Yep.
2 year.
2-year contract.
Is that the consensus?
Yeah.
Yes.
2 out of 3.
Yes. Yeah, I was, my fuzzy math went fuzzy on me there for a minute, so. Got it. I couldn't do the 16, it's like, should be 17, no, it's 16.
So the changes to this contract are January 15th to December of 16.
Before we get too far, Lance, there's another thing that jumped out here that Daryl and I had talked about. To me, it looked like it was something new that came in on this revision. If you go down to number 5, and you read through the second sentence, which is really an indemnification provision. It's really what that is. But that second sentence, we have the engineer shall be in charge of the secondary road department. It just kind of sticks out there. And that's why it kind of jumped out at me. After talking with Daryl, basically just to scratch that sentence there. There's a language up in paragraph 3 dealing with Daryl's control over the secondary road department. Okay, such as the engineer shall also have control of all planning, engineering, construction, maintenance work of the secondary road department and the employees.
So
So-
strike that sentence.
Yeah, that second sentence in number 5.
So from here I got change the date January 15 to 31st of December of 16, striking the second sentence in number 5, and number 7 changing regular compensation, adding the word regular to the second sentence, and number 8 striking paid away from holidays.
Can I back you up one, Lance, just because I have different on mine?
Okay.
The second sentence in number 7, what I have is regular compensation shall be paid,
Striking in full.
correct?
Yep. I
During
missed that.
allotted vacation days off.
Yep, striking in full, I missed that one. And then 11A, adding the words plus accrued vacation and benefits to the end of that, a comma and then a period at the end. And under C, number 2, striking number 2, out of those 6. That's all I have so far.
Striking paid on 8.
Yep, striking paid on 8. And then striking number 2 out of C, of 11C.
That's what I got.
Am I missing anything?
Not as so far. The one big thing I still have a circle around is paragraph number 6, which would be compensation, and I'm assuming it would still be paid based on, well, I don't know where we would end at.
That would be a 15, 16, there should be a,
It needs to match up with the front.
there has to be a 15, 16. So yeah, we only got 1 year contract here.
Actually, a 2-year contract.
It
I
begins
just didn't
January
know.
1st. Yeah, you're right.
That's what threw me in the fuzzy.
Excuse me,
There we
Lance,
go.
I didn't,
Ends in the 16. So that's
I didn't
There we
know
go.
where things were going.
I need
Okay,
it,
on this in regard to the January, July. So I just put in one, if you would want to say pay cycle.
right.
Give it in December 31st.
So I need a line for the year of 2015 and a line item for the year of 2016.
Yep.
Now, and I think, and I guess I don't know. I mean, in regard to this, is the pay going to follow the contract years? Or is the salary and the rate of pay under the salary going to continue to follow the fiscal?
I'd put it as the fiscal, just stay in the same wage now till June 30th. As I am now. Then July 1 to June 30th from 15 to 16. And then July 1, 2016, that's 6 months, but even though you can set the yearly salary, would it be based? I don't.
Because you're negotiating right now your contract. If you don't like it, you should give us our 6 months. And we're going to be at July 1st. So that's going to affect the next year. So having your salary raised July 1st would make the most sense. Because you could budget it in there. Does that make sense? Is that what you just
That's what
said?
you said.
What
So
did I
you
say?
want to continue the salary
I
till,
wanna
for
continue
the
same
fiscal
salary
year?
to finish the fiscal year out.
So then the one will be for the fiscal year 15 and 16, and then the second year would be for 16 through December of 16.
Right, it'd be 6 months.
Through
But you could,
December of 16. So it's a year and a half on the wages, but it's a 2-year contract,
mhm.
ending December 31st. You got all that, Nancy?
Daryl, for my stupidity on the engineering part, I read the code, and help me out with number 4, just explaining it to me on your bond that you have to pay.
That's a question
I
a
know
lot
it's
of
between
engineers have on this
2,000.
bond.
Yeah, it's between $2,000 and $5,000 a bond that you have to pay. Can you explain that to me? I didn't get it.
Not really, because nobody else can, the other
Okay.
engineers.
But
It's something
then,
that's always been in there, and I think
Yeah.
it says in the code, but
yeah.
I don't know if that's covered under our insurance or, nobody's very clear on it. other
Well, then it
counties.
says, well, then you have down, all fees incurred by filing said bond shall be paid by the board. And by saying that should be paid by the board, you're saying should be paid by the county, right?
Right. I mean, it'd be no different than you have
And I have
carrying
no clue
liability.
what that fee would be. So, yeah, I didn't understand number 4 after I read. It seemed complicated to me that, so you literally, have you been paying a bond?
We haven't
You
had a
haven't been
bond
paying a
and,
But it says in the code you have to.
Well, yeah, it's one of those lost things where nobody is clear cut on it, and none of the other county engineers. I mean, it's been
Pay
a
the
question
bond.
all the time,
Yeah,
and it's just kind of been stuck in there, and yeah, I'm not sure on the whole thing.
The county pays for a blanket bond to cover all of the elected officials and department heads, and that's probably what it's referring to.
so that covers, yeah, that code's specific for engineers, but that covers every, because it's supposed to be between, how much was that then?
I don't know.
'Cause it
There's a
did have
notice
a
that
actual-
It's paid through the auditor's office that it's a blanket bond that if there's, I mean, it's a liability type bond, I believe, and it covers each employee and the department head or elected official.
And Randy's, when it says that all the way through, where that the board shall pay for that, it does mean county, correct?
In regard to this,
Yeah,
I mean, I believe that would be the interpretation. I mean, that could be an easy change.
because then it says later on that if the engineer demonstrates actual malice or willful, wanton, or reckless misconduct, the board shall defend or any or all actions and pay for the judgments rendered. So and that's in number 5.
Yeah.
So that means the county is going to pay, you know, if we're liable for some accident that occurred.
And actually, that should be, I mean, with respect to that.
Mhm.
And I guess I would propose in 4 and 5, 4 being the last word, changing the word board to county.
County, yeah.
And I believe in 5,
I mean, if you look right here, it says by and between Hardin County, Iowa, by its board of supervisors here and after called the board.
Mhm.
So the board refers to Hardin County.
that, yeah, as the party.
Right.
I mean, and that's why I believe it would be interpreted that way.
All right.
It may be, I can see though in this indemnification provision, running the change. And what I would look in regard to 2 other places in 5, being in the last sentence and the second to the last.
Mhm.
Where it says, or it would now, under what I have, the county shall defend. And the county may acquire insurance.
Mhm.
Does that
Yeah.
meet the concerns there? And I think part of the reason why I'm looking at there is not, I mean, part of, even though a lot of this is financial, but that is directly in regard to a lawsuit. And we're also using the board as a, if you would want to say, a third entity in that provision, having the engineer, the county, and the board. So I think we probably better delineate who we're talking about there. I'm going to make a suggestion in regard to the payment on the salary. Just in regard to the wording when it sits, and again here, I'm not saying that anything would come up necessarily with regard to it, but to me, I think perhaps we should use the word semi-annually. I mean, twice in this, being the first 6 months of 2015. So we'd have a semi-annual salary of 1/2 of whatever we're looking at. Then we'd have the annual salary for fiscal year 2015, 2016, and then a semi-annual salary in regard to July 1 of 2016 through December 31 of 2016. The other reason why I'm saying that is we got some calculations based upon basically, if you would want to say, dividing that equal installments. I mean, that is part of it. And I mean, truthfully, I just feel a little bit more comfortable if we're dealing with different amounts in semi-annual time periods, is to use that language as opposed to the annual when we're only talking about 6 months. But I think we
Okay.
still need to fill in some dollar amounts.
Are there equal pay periods when you do semi-annual?
Where are you paid? Where are you paid?
You know what I'm saying? I mean, you might, or am I
I
way
don't know
off?
what you're asking.
You got the same thing on the annual, potentially. Yeah, I mean, if you're paid on every Friday, somebody has to make an adjustment to make it equal in installments if you're on an annual salary, basis. But it's done
Okay.
in regard to however many payments or pay days there's going to be in that pay period.
So you want no change in 2015? January 2015 to July
First,
1st, or June 30th.
right.
Just continue at my same rate of pay. What the bi-weekly payments been, continue that till June 30th.
And how much was that? Joe?
Well, the annual was that.
Is it a 2?
93733.
Okay.
Do we got everything else figured out in the contract? Except for this part? Yes?
I think so.
Yes? Okay. Now we just fill in the blanks.
If you don't hurry up, Randy might not be the county attorney anymore.
I got a little time. Okay, so January 1st of 2015 to June 30th of 2015, same pay is current, correct? That's how we want to write that. And then from July 1st, 2015 to June 31st of 2016, I need a number. Unless you want to give them a raise for the first semi-annual.
And then you do another quarter, then it'll be a quarter after that,
Then it'll be a half after that.
or half, I mean.
Yeah. So what is the board's preference? I'll throw 2,000 out. Get the conversation going.
2,000 per
Increase.
year,
Increase.
2,000 increase over the
Yeah,
whole.
better use the
Over
word
2 years.
increase. 2,000 would be pretty good, wouldn't it, Daryl? Over the course of July 15th, July 1st, 2015 to June 30th, 2016, a $2,000 increase.
Okay. And then what, we're.
No, I'm just making sure we're on that number.
No, I understand, just to follow along, then then you'd have half of that going on to the next one, 216, right? So it'd be 1,000 on the next half a year.
Yes.
That's how that, okay. I just wanted to make sure I knew I was following along right.
So July 1st, 2016 to December 31st, 2016, I would be looking at 1,000. Is that what you just said there, too?
Yeah.
Okay. And then we
Works for me.
renegotiate January again. Ron?
I'm trying to, sorry, I drove until 5 last night. So I was driving through snow all night long and into the morning. So you were saying $1,000 increase from the fiscal year of July 2015, July 1st, 2015 to June 30th on 2016.
That's at 2,000.
2,000.
You
Yeah,
threw out
2,000
two.
on that one.
Oh,
And then it'd be 1,000 for the next half year.
And then 1,000 increase for the next.
for the following, so $3,000 increase over 2 years.
From today's date, it would be a
From today's date,
3,000,
yeah.
yes.
No, for
I
two and a
say
half.
a year and a half because he doesn't get a raise the first 6.
Yeah, he doesn't get a raise in the
So-
first
Right.
6.
But from today's date,
Yes.
the effective date, it would be 3,000.
Right. Is there even a motion possible on this now? I think Randy's comfortable with the changes. Are we all comfortable with the changes before a motion tries to come out of this?
For the
We're all on the
salary,
same,
yeah.
yes, and for
Yeah.
everything else.
We gotta negotiate with Daryl New on that salary, that would be a negotiable number.
What are you looking at? Can you give me the actual numbers?
In July 1st, 2015, your annual salary is gonna increase $2,000. Until July, or June 30th, and then July 1st of 2016, it will increase $1,000. Your contract will terminate December 31st. So it'll have to be renegotiated of 2016. The contract to be up. Did I say that right?
Yeah.
I got a weird look from Randy.
You could go all the way to July 1st if you wanted to, but you don't have to.
Of 2016?
For the last
Or
one.
17?
But the contract's gonna be up, so you have to.
I see what you mean.
Mhm.
So you could go to,
And you're at 2,000 to 2,000.
See, this is part of where, the reason why you got the weird look from me.
Because if you.
Is it begs the question, when we're talking of that July 1, 2016, is that a $1,000 increase
On
of
half a year. Yes, on
semi-annual
a semi.
salary, or an annual that's going to be divided by 2? That would be the semi-annual? Is there any reason why I can't put these in actual dollars?
I don't know them off the top of my head,
Okay. Well,
the actual dollar.
Well, let's put it this way, neither do I. Without doing the math on the dividing.
Daryl, you want to throw your numbers out?
93,730 is the current salary.
That's what I have, and I divided that by 2 to get a semi-annual.
Okay, then July 1, you add 2,000 to that, so 95,730.
Okay,
So then if you did half of that
mm-hmm.
is 47,865, then add 1,000.
So it would be 48,865.
Yep.
That'd be July through December.
Yes.
So our numbers right now?
I believe so. If,
So then 2 years from now, you'll be sitting here negotiating the contract at this time, and then, but those salaries will, that increase will take effect right away then, right?
Yeah, there'll
Instead of
only
why
be a
why you're
contract.
doing it right now.
There'll only be a contract in effect through December 31 of
Right.
2016.
Is that the way you want to set it up? Or do you want to set it up to be effective all the way through July of 17? Or to July of 17? So you can get through the budget year.
We already budgeted it. I mean, you're budgeted through July 1st, so
But
that
it-
amount wouldn't be budget on the budget, because at this point it wouldn't be, because it would not be a wage for that second 6 months
All right.
on the budget. And that's why I'm wondering if you want to make it go to get it on the budget, you may want to make that go to July 1st. That way there's something budgeted there. And make it sitting here a little easier in 2 years to know going forward. But you're going to make the decision whether he's going forward in December.
Right.
Because a 6-month deal will kick in at that point.
Right.
Although it won't, because the contract's at the end. Right?
Mhm. Either make a new contract or,
So this is
Yeah.
still new for me. We sit and negotiate salaries in an open forum like this. That this is the usual. Just wanted to know.
Let's put it this way, no, this isn't usual.
Oh.
I mean, this is not usual in regards to having the contract negotiation basically in an open meeting. I don't believe it is. But let's put it this way, I'm going to put the reverse on you, Ron. The public is entitled to know
I'm
what
fine
is
with that.
what is in that agreement. Normally, what it would do is you would potentially have your negotiations, other than in the open meeting, then you would agenda it with regard to that contract, and the board would need to approve that agreement, contract and agreement, during an open meeting.
Because I kind of feel uncomfortable right now when we're talking about salary. If I would agree or disagree on what we think the salary should be, shouldn't that be a private discussion and then maybe agreed upon at someplace else, or should we discuss it right now?
Well, I don't know about agreed upon at
I
someplace
mean,
else.
you know what I'm saying. Yes, I'm sorry.
I mean,
I was under the impression that employment contracts were public.
They will be public.
They will be public.
I mean, at some
But I
point in
mean,
time.
even in the negotiation, that the
Well-
public has the right to be there.
So if I thought that salary increase should be 1% rather than 2% for the first year, because we've done the research and Darryl was right up front. I mean, he feels he's paid in the higher, above average, and I think he is above average. But then, so then should we boost him up? How much more? I mean. So I was wanting to maybe discuss $1,000 this first year and maybe $1,000 the next year. That's a 1%, and 1% actually it's over 1%, but at 1% of $94,000 is
Now,
a pretty good jump.
I mean, there's nothing that prohibits you from doing this by any means. Again, I would say it's not necessarily the norm of having the actual negotiations take place, more as a time constraint as anything else.
Yeah.
I mean, but once again, Ron, this entire agreement is going to be public.
Yeah, oh, absolutely. I totally agree with that.
Yep. But yeah, I too feel uncomfortable throwing dollar amounts out, around. I mean, with regard to it, even though, let's put it this way, how many people here's salaries or public record are subject to being published? Quite a few.
Mine have always been my whole life.
So, I mean, once again, we're looking at that standpoint as well. And I don't think Darryl is exempt from that either. I mean, even though he
What's
is
the difference
re-elected.
between this and Lynn Adams sitting here and saying he wants $5,000 a year, and we gave that to him? That was in public.
Yeah. I
Same
mean,
thing.
and again, is it the norm? No, not necessarily, just because, I mean, usually negotiations take a relatively lengthy period of time. Do you do your union negotiations during an open meeting?
They're open for the first meeting,
I mean, do you?
but then it's closed.
Do you, yeah, I
Yeah.
mean, do you have those? No. I mean, but are those is that a public contract? Sure is.
Afterwards,
Yeah,
yeah.
afterwards
It comes
it
out
is.
as, yeah.
Yeah. I mean,
That was my point. Afterwards, it should be, and it's a
yeah,
public position.
but I think we've gotten this far, no stopping that. I'm getting the feeling we might be getting close to a motion.
Getting pretty close.
Yeah. So I'm going to put this before the motion rather than wait till later. I haven't written down exact verbiage, but I've been sitting here thinking, if we're going to terminate that previous agreement, why not do it in this one? Okay? We have the parties that would have to agree to terminating that previous agreement, the parties here, so why not just put a provision in there explaining why it is and terminating that previous agreement? It would be towards the end. In fact, it would be the last numbered paragraph, whatever that should be. Hey, number 14. And this is not going to be exact. I may change it a little bit, but it'd be to the effect of, since this contract and agreement supplants the remaining term of the party's previous agreement, then I will have to throw in the date, okay, of that previous employment agreement. The parties hereby agree to terminate the contract and agreement dated whatever that should be. I mean, it doesn't have to be anything special. It's just stating that this is going to be your agreement.
You want to add that as a number 14 line
Yes.
item?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, we're down to the nuts and bolts of it, of the writing's done. We just need to throw in the dollar amounts again. The last question was on the July 16th through December. We had a dollar amount. Do you want that dollar amount instead of a semi-annual amount? Do you want that to be an annual amount divided through? So it's budgeted that way.
That'd be the only nice thing for the engineer budget, but technically the contract will be done on that.
All right. So I guess he'd have to find the money if he gets a raise out of his budget.
Or I could do the same thing, raise won't take effect until next fiscal year.
Right.
So do the exact same thing you're doing now.
I would say they would wait till that day comes and decide January 1st of 2017 what his wage is going to be again. Figure that December. What you got to work within the budget and what we can do and everything else.
Mhm.
Ryan, you got any questions?
No.
No, I'm just throwing my opinion out here.
Yeah.
And those numbers I threw out were opinions. I mean, you guys haven't made a motion on anything, so
Mhm.
I'm open for a motion.
I know we've all been out and talked with Daryl quite a bit on salaries and everything, so
Yeah.
I think individually we've all communicated with him. I don't want to put words in his mouth of what was said back, but I guess going forward, you're looking at if Ron is throwing out a little over 1,000 and Lance is throwing out, 2,000. I think Daryl, in his years I've been here that we brought him on, has saved the county's boatloads of money by what he's done out there. That we can't compensate him for how much he's saved, so that's not what this is about. But I do commend him on his work out there, and I think he needs to be rewarded for what he's done out there, getting everybody in shape and bringing those guys together. And I know Lance, when you and I brought him on, we talked about we'd bring him on a little bit low and then, make sure he was up with everyone else in a few years. We were using at that time different counties, and now all of a sudden there's a chart came out that uses different counties, so we're not even comparing. We're using two different charts now on this comparison. So going forward, it'd be nice to decide what counties you're going to compare to, and not not have that change every year. Either one of these isn't going to break the bank. So I'm going to attempt a motion, and if we get a second, we can go with it. If not, we can come up with something else.
I do have a question.
Yes.
Can we-
Oh, I'm sure you do.
Randy has drafted a resolution which adopts your contract. So by adopting the resolution, you adopt the contract. Do you need anything, because everything you've talked about will be contained in that contract? And did I give you that resolution? Do you have that?
I'm not sure I have that one.
Oh, if I have that one.
I might sit in here.
I've got it.
So.
Going by that, I have no problem with using that resolution. And that refers to, thinking it's probably an employment agreement attached as exhibit or copy A with regard to it. And at that point, that may have been, I don't know what got attached to it, okay, which one. The only thing is, I think we at least need to refer to the revisions to that agreement that were discussed and agreed upon by the parties today during this meeting. I think that reference needs to be made because that is what will be attached to that resolution, okay? I don't have the exact Exhibit A right before me because we didn't have a complete agreement prior to this meeting. So I think that's really what we need to do in the form of the motion. I would like some of the highlights. I would like some highlights in the motion with the revisions discussing and including salary of. I think I would like that with respect to the motions. The motion. I don't think we need to go into every revision that was discussed here. If I have any specific questions in regard to it, I will ask the board before we're done.
Or left the tape again.
No.
So we're gonna do a resolution, or we're gonna approve the contract?
So you want us to approve the dollar amounts that we're looking at putting into there, so you have dollar amounts, so then we can go ahead. You want us to choose the dollar amounts to put in, so then we can go ahead and approve a resolution.
Yep.
Okay.
And I would also I think I also would refer to the term. That it's going to be. I don't think you need probably much else in your
Term as far as the
references.
years.
Date to date.
Date.
January 1, 2015, December 31, 2016.
So January 1, 2015 to June 30th, 2015, it would stay 93,730. Is that correct, Darryl? The right number?
If that's the right number, I'm thinking that's it.
I have a semi-annual amount, and the reason why I'm interjecting here is because I am going to put in a semi-annual amount there of $46,865, which my calculation would be 1/2 of $93,730.
So you want the half of the amount of $93,730, which is $46,865. The next You guys gotta make a motion.
And then from July 1st to June 30th, it would be
15 to 16.
2016. And then you'd have July 1st to December 31st, 2016.
2016.
Well, then I'd make a motion on the salary increase as of January 1st, 2015 to June 30th of 2015, that his salary remains the same.
Yeah,
Which is
46,865.
Yeah, it's that number right there. Did you get that, Nancy?
Yes, thank you.
July 1st, 2015 to June 30th of 2016, I propose a $2,000 a year raise on that part, and then from July 1st to December 31st of 2016, I propose a $1,000 raise on that semi-annual. I don't have the figures what that would be.
I know the figures that I have, Brian, would be for the fiscal year 2015 to 2016, an annual amount of $95,730.
Okay.
And from the period of July 1, 2016 to December 31, 2016, a semi-annual amount of $48,865.
I will make that part of my motion, those two figures that were just read there. And I'll stop there, I guess.
It's been moved. No second? I can second.
You can second it.
I'll second. All in favor, say aye. Or any discussion?
Yeah, this is definitely, that I'm not going against the integrity of that man over there. We're a little early in our budgeting. We don't know what we're going to give the other department heads. Yeah, I wish the discussion was in a month. And I guess we are just dealing with a $1,000 difference here. So, yeah. And you know what I think about you. You're a respected department head. So, yeah. All right.
My discussion on this would be, as talking to Paul himself, when all three of us were in the room, one of the things he said that if we lose our engineer, we wouldn't even come close to catching him for a salary, catching another one for a salary like this. They do have a hard time finding them. I think Darryl has done quite a few things and he's come to us twice asking for no money, no pay raise last time and this time. I respect him for that, but I also respect the work he does, and I think he is entitled to raises. And I don't think these amounts are a large amount. He's not catching his peers in the wages he's making. I know the sheets he gave us show that he's on the top side, but you can also look at the surrounding counties around us and he's on the bottom side. And I don't think it's out of line giving him these raises. Any other discussion?
There are some. This is so hard because there's, as you do the research, there's so many variables that come into play. I mean, there are other responsibilities that are added on to some engineers that you're comparing the pay to, and we can go on and Darryl's done the research, but anyway, yeah, let's move on.
Hearing no other discussion, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Now we need to do the resolution. Next is the motion on the resolution.
Do you want to do the wording on this
I'm
one?
not sure.
Three things to say.
We approving the resolution? Yeah, make a motion that we approve the resolution of, on the engineer's employment contract agreement. Can it be as simple as that? Okay.
I'll second.
It's been moved and seconded. Any discussion? That's with all the changes he's made in it.
Mhm.
Any other discussion? Hearing none, roll call.
Brian?
Aye.
Ron?
Aye.
Lance?
Aye. Motion carries. Next, we have a proposed policy to the employees' health plan, which is something. There we go. All this does is allows outgoing elected officials to be able to pay the full amount of money, but able to stay on the health insurance plan through the county as a, they would pay the full amount right now. If they go out, they're eligible for 18 months on COBRA. This would allow them to stay on till the age of 65. Any discussion on that or anything?
I'll make a motion to approve the proposed policy to employees' health plan.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Any discussion? One of these things, I believe that it affects numerous people in this room. A lot of people have moved up through the system and taken on the elected officials position. And this can help ensure that they would have health insurance, providing an election. Whether they leave on their own will or get beat, either way is fine with me. But if they gave up insurance at one time, and it just allows them to stay on the insurance. Anything else? Any, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries. Utility permit, secondary roads department.
Make a motion, we accept permit number 12-30-14. Got it.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries. Darryl, I have, is this those?
Yep.
Okay.
Those are the utility permits.
Got anything for secondary roads?
Cool.
Okay. Randy. Thought you were gonna say something.
No.
Just stretching?
This is, who was it, Nancy, that said this was going to be a 20-minute meeting?
They said they wanted the longest meeting. I'm trying to pull it
I
off.
think you might have done it. You might have owned it right there.
Any other business?
I personally would like to say thank you to Brian for serving for 4 years on behalf of the residents of Hardin County. I think that you have always thought first and foremost of the taxpayers. And I haven't always agreed with you, and it's because that was where your heart lay, was with the taxpayer and not with me, my priorities, or the employees that I was coming on behalf of. So in that respect, I think that everybody in the county would appreciate if I told you thank you for the time you've served. So thank you very much.
Thank you for that, Jessica.
And Jessica, I'll second that motion.
No.
I'd like to thank Brian and Randy and Barb, all three of them, for the time they've put in.
It's been a joy to work with you guys, so
And
thank you.
in January, we'll have Renee coming in. Any other business? Hearing none, I'll ask for adjournment.
Make a motion to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries.
Thanks.
Aye.
Aye, aye, aye.
Can you give me back an hour and a half of my life?
My butt hurts.